This episode is sponsored by BVI Yacht Sales, our boat broker friends from Tortola and Annapolis. Go to bviyachtSales.com to have a look at all the cool boats they have listed right now, or if you happen to find your dream boat somewhere else, they can be your buyer's broker. In any case, they will make sure you get a great boat for the best price, and I promise you that you will learn a ton in the process. They are a big fan of our boat shopping episodes here on the Quarterdeck podcast, where we pick apart the listings from BVI Yacht Sales, among other brokers, talk about boat shopping, and generally nerd out over boats. BVI Yacht Sales, we love you guys, and thank you so much for sponsoring this episode of the show. Welcome to the Quarterdeck Sailing Podcast with Andy Schell and August Sandberg, a podcast by 59 North. Ahoy shipmates, August here. Hope you are having a wonderful day. The Quarterdeck Podcast is back. Tell your friends. Every Tuesday for the next 5 weeks, we will have another episode for you. And when that's over, our sister podcast, On the Wind, will return on the 22nd of September. To learn more about sailing and to support what we do, check out our community site at quarterdeck.59-north.com. You will find a welcoming and knowledgeable community on there, along with videos, live streams, articles, and behind-the-scenes resources from the 59 North team. Welcome aboard. In this episode, I will share with you a recording I did debriefing one of the sail training camps I did on Eastbourne this spring. I learned a ton from that, and I hope you will too. May you have fair winds and following seas out there, and if you don't, hold fast. Ahoy shipmates, August here. I am just back from a wonderful sail training camp on Eastbourne here on the west coast of Norway, and this is going to be story time. It's just me telling you a little bit about it and do a little sort of passage debrief. It was a really good, interesting week on the boat in this very fascinating transitional. So it's trip started on May 6th. So it's this kind of spring transitional. You kind of get all kinds of weather here, which is very, very fascinating. It's trip started in Bergen on the west coast of Norway. We're at 60 degrees north here, and yeah, we had a wonderful trip. But as many might be familiar with, the trip started with some technical difficulties this time, because I had just had Eastbourne up on the hard right before the trip, because that's how it's the scheduling worked. So I had the boat up on the land just to do some routine stuff, clean the hull, bottom paint, swap out the sinks, grease the seacocks and do all that stuff. And then when I went to replace the sink on the prop, we have a max prop, feathering max prop on Eastbourne, and it didn't fit. It was the wrong zinc for a smaller max prop that I had. And so that was a huge bummer. Tried to get a new one before we launched the boat, couldn't find anywhere, and I ordered one online, and it wouldn't arrive in time. And due to the scheduling, the boat had to splash, and so I figured, all right, I'll just kind of splash the boat with no prop sink, and then I'll just dive down and fit it later. And I was wondering, should I put the old sink back on or just leave the no sink on there? Having no sink on would make the process underwater a lot easier, because I didn't have to remove the old one first underwater. But then if I had the old sink on there, that would just mean that I wouldn't have to get a new sink down there right away. I could leave it for a bit, because the old sink was in fairly good shape. But I opted to not leave the old one on there, which I was very happy for in the end come later. So I got the new sink in the mail, and that was like the first night of the trip. That was our first little mission there, was to get this sink fitted. And I we have this wonderful little thing on board the boat. It's called a spare air, which is like a mini scuba setup, which is just a mouthpiece attached directly to a small scuba tank, so that you could just put a mask on and this thing, just keep it in your mouth, and you can dive. You can stay underwater for like 10 minutes. And that would have made this whole job so easy. Like it would have been just, over in a couple of minutes, because I could just gone down and, put the screws in there, attach the sink, and that would have been it. So, but I went to this 2 different dive shops here and tried to fill it up with air, but because it was an American model and they needed an adapter to refill it here, so I was unable to fill it that time, sadly. But I will make sure now to keep that on the boat all the time. If I ever have to do any sort of stuff like that again, that would have been an absolute lifesaver. So, as it was, I had no assistance except for, a wetsuit, which was good because the water was cold, and that's it. So I had to do many, many dives down there to get this thing attached. So it's a circular sink that goes on the end of the prop hub, and it's fitted by 3 little screws that goes in. And so what I did was that I attached some fishing line to one of the holes in the sink, because that also has 3 holes to fit the 3 screws, so that in case I dropped it, it wouldn't sink all the way down to the bottom. And then I had the screws and a little Allen key to attach the screws, to screw the screws in. And then I just did it in, I have no idea how many dives that took. Many, because you could like dive down, holding my breath. I'm not a skilled free diver at all, and then just make a few turns with the Allen key and then up to get some air. But it was actually not that bad. I was able to, line up the holes pretty quick and get the first screw in quite easily, which was the most kind of challenging part, to align that, to kind of attach the sink to the prop hub, and that was done pretty quickly. And then I started to screw this screw in, just a couple of rotations every dive. And I quickly regretted not putting the gearbox in gear before starting this process. I didn't really think of that, but because the gearbox was in neutral, meant that the prop shaft was just free spinning freely. And that meant, as I'm trying to, get some purchase on this and kind of have something to work against, the prop was just spinning. Right. And also, I just had the boat on land, and the propeller was, sanded and greased, right? Just recently. And also it's a feathering prop, right? So the blades, they turn as the prop rotates, and it's this whole moving, slippery thing. So it was quite challenging. And the thing, and you might think, hey, why did you just put the gearbox into gear and that's it? But Espion has a hydraulic gearbox, meaning that the engine has to be engaged and on for the gearbox actually to be able to go from neutral to kind of locked in gear. And I had when I thought of this, I had 1 screw already attached and halfway in the prop, and I did not want to, so I'd have to turn the prop around essentially to put it in gear and then shut it down. And I was not going to risk that, having a zinc attached with 1 screw down there to start spinning around. So I accepted that, and in the end, I was actually quite pleased with that, because I was able to what I found was the best technique was to dive down, and I didn't really have, I'm a pretty big guy, and I didn't have enough weight on the weight belt to actually cancel out my buoyancy, so I was quite buoyant. So I found the best technique was to just dive down and just kind of let my buoyancy press me up against the hull, right underneath, right over the prop. And that would give me a little bit of stability and give me some seconds to work right there. And then it was very helpful to have the hole that I was working with at the top, and having the gearbox in neutral meant that I could spin the prop around so that the hole that I was working on was always on top and nearest the surface. So that was actually quite helpful. So I'm glad I did that in the end. And doing that, I was able to screw in all the holes once the first bolt was in, and I was confident that the sink wasn't going to go anywhere. I cut the fishing line away, and then it was very successable, and I didn't drop a single bolt or a single Allen key, which I'm very, very proud of. So that was very satisfactory. So that was actually a pretty good experience. I was very happy with that. But I will make sure to triple check that I actually have received the right sink for that prop in the future. And I will always keep the spare air unit on board the boat full in case I ever need to do anything like that again. So that's all good. And then we were ready to go, and we had a perfect weather situation with, us being on the west coast of Norway. We have the North Sea out there to the west of us, and we had this big low coming up from the southwest, which we often have up here at this time of year. And as this low was kind of coming closer and further north, we would get northerlies, because it's a low pressure system. They drive the winds counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. So we would get, perfect conditions for going north for for that start once that low came closer to us. So that was great, and we set off to go north, and we sailed with beautiful southerly winds. First, we went up to Feia, which is a beautiful little island not too far away. It's a great kind of first day of sailing. And then we kept going on the second day, and we aimed for these islands called Bulandet, which are actually the westernmost part of Norway. So they're right kind of out there in the ocean, and they're far, far out. And it was just a beautiful sail. By this time, this low had come a lot closer to the coast, and the winds were a lot stronger. So we were just absolutely flying. And once we got closer to Bulandet, these islands, we actually didn't dare to go in there because the harbor entrance, it's very small and narrow, and it's on the southern part of the islands. And so we would have to, and the waves were huge, and we would have to kind of surf in through these little rocks and into the harbor there. And it was just going to be a little too hairy. So we actually turned east and sailed into the fjords instead, and to find a little bit of shelter there inside. And we went to this beautiful place called Askvoll, which was really good. I had never been there before, but it was very, very good. And so we spent a little time there, or just in an afternoon, and then the next morning we set sail north again. The southerlies were still holding up, so we could go further north, and we sailed up to Florø, which was the northernmost point that we made it to. And really, really cool place. That whole area is just so wonderful. I mean, it's pretty close to Bergen, but it's just I haven't been there in several years, but it is gorgeous. And we just learned when we were there that they did the first Dune movie, the home planet of the House Atreides, the Caladan planet, was actually filmed out there at Chin, which is very close to Flora where we were. So we could see like we brought up the movie, and we see the scenes, and we kind of would recognize the mountains and stuff around us. So that was really cool. And I mean, it is just so beautiful and dramatic and crazy. And yeah, no, I'm not surprised that they chose to film there at all. It is a absolutely gorgeous place. And so we then went to Flora. That was a great stop. It's a really cute little town. And then the next day, now this low had kind of moved right north of us. So the winds were then, coming out of the west. And so we started to move south again because we were kind of running out of time, and we had so strong southerlies that we had gone really far along to the north. So we needed to make our way back south again. So we had sort of westerlies, which we were a bit inside the fjords now, so we had to do a little bit of tacking, a little bit of upwind, a little bit of beam reaching, going south. And just a little bit after we left Flora, we had some really strong squalls coming through, and we had this hail squall that hit us like a train just as we were kind of navigating through this little narrow, messy bit outside of Flora here, and it was just absolutely like you couldn't see into the weather, and you had these little hail balls were just like striking us, and it was really painful. But I had this really positive experience of our Orca tablet that we used on that trip, because I remember I was in a similar situation in Antigua. I sailed into that bay in Antigua, into the anchorage there, and we were hit by a squall, and I was using iPads for navigation, and you're just like instantly blinded. Like the rain is so thick you can't see anything, and then the iPad just becomes useless in the wet and in the rain, and so you can't. It just zooms in down to like a meter's resolution, and you can't see anything, and you're just like blind. I was just there circling, hoping I wouldn't hit anything. But using the Orca up there was really fascinating, because it just kept on working, even if the screen just like filled up with hailstones, and we we were like using the thing with gloves, and like the touchscreen still worked, which was fantastic. So really, really wonderful. Full disclosure here, Orca did give us that tablet, but I am, they're not paying me to say this. I was very impressed with how that worked, and really turned what could have been sort of a little bit of a scary situation there into an absolute breeze. So very, very positively, very impressed by that unit that we had there. So we had some really interesting weather that day, squalls, hail, and sunshine, and everything else. And we made our way south, stopped at an island called Losna, which is really nice. And I have some relatives who has a full farm there, and so I kind of knew some people, and we were able to dock on one of the docks down there, and we got to meet some people, and we saw this beautiful art gallery that one of my acquaintances down there has put together, and it was really, really cool. We had snow that night, so we really had everything on this trip. But it was just so beautiful because there was also this kind of algae bloom that turned the fjords completely green, and then you had the white on the mountaintops and these really dramatic scenery where you had the mountains just meeting the fjords, and the colors was just absolutely crazy. So that was really happy we turned into the fjords there and sort of explored that area, because that was just absolutely beautiful. And so now this low that had been sort of making all of our planning for us was now to the north and somewhat to the east of us. And so now we're getting the backside of the low, so we're getting northerly winds, and so now we're in a really good spot to sail back south. And so we set the spinnaker and just flew south, made some really good speeds, and initially we had plans to stop at like a little cute anchorage, kind of a little bit north of Bergen, and stop and then go into Bergen on the next day. But we had just so the sailing was just so good that we just went out in the ocean and just kept going, and so we overshot our destination by a lot. So we just kept on sailing far south of Bergen. It was so beautiful. It was, sunny and perfect downwind conditions. And it was Joe's birthday, who was one of the crew on board. And so we just didn't want it to stop. So we just kept going. And I made Joe a birthday cake, or I tried to make him a birthday cake. I failed miserably, and I'm blaming the rolling for this, because I, put the cake into the oven, but we were rolling pretty badly. And so my theory is that the cake just didn't rise or set because it was just shaken and stirred so much by the rolling. So we just came out like this, just kind of black, sticky goop. It's a chocolate cake, or it was supposed to be a chocolate cake. And it was just super gross. And then I bought these little candles for it, and so I just put some candles in the goop, and I just served it in the pan. And we were scraping it out with spoons and ate it. It was just the saddest looking birthday cake I've seen in my life. But it was. I mean, the taste was fine. The taste was fine, and it was at least it was pretty funny. So that was good. And we just kept on going there for south, and ended up in this wonderful place called Glasvær, where I'd called ahead, and there's a little restaurant cafe thing there. The owner kept it open for us and served us dinner at 11 o'clock at night, I think. And we were the only ones there, and he sang happy birthday, and we had drinks, and it was a wonderful day. And then we sailed back north to Bergen after that, and we had all sorts of little weird breezes going up there, and we tried to use the spinnaker. It didn't really work, but it was only 30 miles or so. We came up and then back to Bergen. So that was it. It was a really, really fun trip, and I got to see some places that I haven't seen before at all, even though I was born and raised on these waters around Bergen. There is just the fjords and the archipelagos, and everything around there is just an endless. You could sail here your whole life. You'll still find little untouched gems that you didn't know about. So it was really, really good. and the sailing was fantastic, and really got to do what I always hope to do on these sail training camps, is just to kind of try a lot of things. Like we sailed upwind, we sailed downwind, we had the spinnaker up, we had all sorts. We docked the boat many times, and we got to try out a lot of cool things. And yeah, no, it was a really good time. So I'm really, really pleased. We got all sorts of weather, everything from sunshine and calm to, gale force and hail and snow. So we really got everything. So very, very pleased, and already looking forward to my next one. So yeah, super, super happy about that one, and thank you for listening. If you have if you want to go on one of these, I am sure we will be posting a few soon coming up for 2028. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. And hold fast. I think it can come quite a bit more to port now. Because we are trying to go way down there.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening, and thanks again to BVI Yacht Sales for sponsoring the show. Find them at bviyachtSales.com. If you want to join the Quarterdeck, go to quarterdeck.59-north.com. The Quarterdeck podcast is produced by August Sandberg for 59 North. Music is by the Storm Weather Shanty Choir.
You can tighten that up if you want there.